Black twin sisters were threatened in karate class by black belts. They didn't know she was a relentless fighter. The air crackled with hostility as the twins stepped into the dojo, their every move scrutinized by eyes eager for their downfall. "You too quiet at the back of the room. This isn't the place for your fighting traditions," growled Caleb Walsh, a 20-year-old black belt, making ironic quotation marks with his fingers as he deliberately blocked the twins' path to the main mats. His partner Logan Brooks laughed beside him, adjusting the black belt he wore as a trophy of superiority. 18-year-old sisters Ava and Nora Davis had just entered the prestigious Silver Phoenix Dojo for their first official class in 2024. The atmosphere screamed tradition and exclusivity. Mats imported from Japan, immaculate mirrors covering every wall, and photographs of Asian masters watching solemnly from above. It was the kind of place where each monthly fee cost $500, 0 cents. Caleb's sneer was a calculated strike, meant to shatter their confidence before they even began. "The problem is, you don't understand real discipline," Caleb continued, approaching with calculated arrogance. "Traditional karate demands respect for hierarchy. Maybe you should look for something more suited to your natural style of conflict resolution." Logan nodded with false wisdom. "Like boxing or those street fights you guys probably know?" Sensei Carter watched the scene from across the dojo, pretending to adjust equipment while allowing his favorite students to establish the natural order of things. His silence was a betrayal, a tacit approval of the cruelty unfolding before him. 30 other students pretended to practice kata, but all were paying attention to the theater of humiliation being staged. A few parents in the bleachers whispered among themselves, clearly uncomfortable, but none intervened. Ava took a deep breath, vaguely remembering the conversation she and her father had had the week before. Her heart pounded with the weight of his warning, a premonition of the battle ahead. "You're going to encounter resistance," he had said. "You always do." At the time, they had thought he was being overly cautious. Now they understood that he had been realistic. "Discipline is something we know well," Ava said calmly, her voice carrying an authority that made Logan stop laughing. Her steady gaze was a silent challenge, a spark of defiance that unsettled the bullies. There was something about the way she said it. Not defensive, not nervous, but with a quiet confidence of someone who had weathered far worse storms. "Oh, really?" Caleb scoffed, nudging Nora's shoulder. His touch was a deliberate provocation, testing the limits of her restraint. "Then show me that discipline by taking their place." That's when something changed in the air. The twins didn't back down or bow. Instead, their bodies subtly shifted into positions that had nothing to do with traditional karate. They were the stances of predators who knew exactly how strong their prey was. Any experienced fighter would recognize the signs: weight distributed perfectly, muscles relaxed but ready to explode, eyes calculating distances and angles of attack. "Interesting," Nora murmured, examining Caleb as a scientist would study an insect. Her cold scrutiny sent a shiver through the room, a hint of the storm brewing beneath her calm exterior. "How long have you been practicing karate anyway?" The question caught Caleb off guard. 7 years, why?" "Professional curiosity," Ava replied, a hint of dangerous amusement in her voice. Her tone was a blade, sharp and precise, cutting through Caleb's bravado. The two exchanged a quick glance, the kind of silent communication only twins can have. Caleb felt a chill run down his spine as he realized that the newbies were studying him as if they already knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage. The way Ava tilted her head slightly, the way Nora shifted her weight, the way both kept their hands relaxed but strategically positioned. None of this was the behavior of frightened beginners. "Listen carefully," Caleb said, trying to regain control of the situation. His voice wavered, betraying a flicker of doubt he couldn't hide. "I've taken down people twice your size. I've competed in 3 states. You're just 2 more girls trying to fit in where you don't belong." "How many fights have you won in the last 6 months?" Nora asked casually, as if she were asking about the weather. Her question was a trap, baiting Caleb to reveal his overconfidence. Logan frowned. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple question," Ava replied. "You talk a lot about experience. We're curious to know what your real experience is." The dojo fell silent. There was something about the two girls that challenged the entire established hierarchy of the place. They wore white belts, but they behaved as if they held secrets that could completely redefine the power dynamics within. Sensei Carter finally approached, sensing that the situation was getting out of his control. "Girls, I believe Caleb and Logan were just explaining our traditional protocols." His words were a feeble attempt to mask his complicity, a shield against the twins' piercing gaze. "Protocols," Ava repeated, savoring the word. Interesting choice of vocabulary. Her sarcasm was a warning, a signal that the facade of civility was crumbling. As the tension grew in the dojo, no one imagined that these two beginners held secrets that would transform the traditional karate class into something the martial arts community would never forget. Because sometimes the most dangerous people are exactly those who seem most harmless at first glance. If you're enjoying this story of overcoming adversity and justice, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will completely redefine the meaning of the word respect. The first official class began 15 minutes later, with the twins relegated to the far corner of the mat. Sensei Carter handed out basic exercises for beginners, while Caleb and Logan were given permission to lead warm-ups with the intermediate colored belts. "Basic stances for the newbies," Caleb announced, approaching with renewed arrogance. His smirk was a mask, hiding the unease sparked by the twins' earlier defiance. "Let's see if you can at least stand up straight." Ava and Nora obeyed silently, assuming the positions demonstrated, with a precision that should have served as a warning. Their movements were too fluid, too controlled, too balanced for true beginners, but Caleb was blinded by his own superiority. "Pathetic," Logan muttered, forcing Nora to correct her stance with unnecessary shoves. His rough hands were a deliberate escalation, a test of Nora's breaking point. 7 years here, and I've never seen anyone so uncoordinated." For the next 20 minutes, the twins endured increasingly aggressive corrections, shves that were almost punches, posture adjustments that were clearly harassment, comments about natural limitations that echoed off the dojo mirrors. The other students watched uncomfortably, but no one intervened. Some parents in the bleachers whispered among themselves, but preferred to pretend they weren't witnessing systematic bullying. It was when Caleb decided to escalate the humiliation that things started to get interesting. "Self-defense demonstration," he announced loudly enough for the whole class to hear. His voice boomed with false confidence, a desperate bid to reassert dominance. "The newbies need to learn what happens when someone doesn't know their place." Ava exchanged a quick glance with Nora, the kind of silent communication only twins can have. For a second, something dangerous flashed in her eyes before returning to her mask of submission. "Logan, grab her." Caleb gestured toward Ava with a dismissive wave. His casual cruelty was a final misstep, underestimating the twins' hidden strength. "I'm going to show you how to neutralize someone who thinks she's smarter than she really is." That's when Ava did something unexpected. Instead of protesting or trying to run away, she smiled. Not the nervous smile of a victim, but the knowing smile of someone who had just been handed the opportunity she had been waiting for. Her smile was a weapon, a silent promise of retribution. "Come on," she said calmly. That night, in the Davis family apartment, retired Colonel Samuel Davis watched his daughters apply ice to discreet bruises as they reported on their day. The bruises were badges of their endurance, each mark a testament to their calculated restraint. "They took the bait," Ava said, examining a purple mark on her forearm. "Caleb and Logan think we're easy targets." "Sensei Carter allows everything," added Nora, "as long as the rich parents are paying." Samuel Davis was 52 years old and had spent 25 of them training elite soldiers in hand-to-hand combat. After retiring from the army, he had spent the last 10 years training his daughters in a lethal combination of multiple martial arts: Krav, Mega, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, and boxing. "How long do you think you can keep up the charade?" he asked, pouring tea, as the twins recounted every detail of the attacks they had suffered. 2, maybe 3 weeks, Ava replied, flexing her fingers in a way any fighter would recognize as a warm-up for serious combat. Her movements were a silent vow, a countdown to the moment of reckoning. "Caleb is getting more aggressive. Logan, too." "Perfect," Samuel smiled with paternal pride. Let them feel powerful. Let them believe they found the perfect victims. The plan was more sophisticated than anyone at the Silver Phoenix Dojo could have imagined. The twins weren't high school students looking for extracurricular activity. They were experienced fighters with over 10 years of intensive training, investigating allegations of systematic discrimination that had come to Samuel's attention through his military contacts. Their mission was a chess game, each move calculated to expose the dojo's dark underbelly. 3 black families had already withdrawn their children from the dojo after similar incidents, but they had never been able to prove a pattern of discriminatory behavior. The accusations were always denied, the evidence always disappeared, and Sensei Carter always maintained his pristine reputation. "The problem is they're smart," Nora observed, showing her father some discreet photos she had taken during training. The photos were a dossier of deceit, capturing the subtle cruelty hidden in plain sight. "It all looks like legitimate training if you don't know what to look for. That's why you're there," Samuel replied, examining the images, to give them enough rope to hang themselves. The twins had microscopic recording devices sewn into their white headbands, high-definition cameras disguised as uniform buttons, and smartphone apps capable of transmitting evidence in real time to secure servers. More importantly, they had the patience and self-discipline to endure weeks of systematic abuse while documenting every assault, every racist comment, every moment of intentional neglect by the administration. "Caleb is going to try something more serious soon," Ava predicted, studying notes she had made on the attacker's behavioral patterns. Her analysis was a battle plan, each observation a step toward victory. "He got frustrated today when we didn't react the way he expected, and Logan is starting to test physical boundaries," Nora added. "Pushing is turning into slaps, slaps will turn into punches." Samuel nodded, recognizing signs he had observed in dozens of combat situations. His eyes gleamed with pride, knowing his daughters were ready to turn the tables. "When that happens, you know what to do." The twins smiled in perfect sync, predators finally seeing their prey close in on the trap. While Caleb and Logan slept peacefully, dreaming of new ways to humiliate the helpless newbies, the Davis sisters spent another 2 hours in the converted gym, perfecting techniques that would turn the next confrontation into something the Silver Phoenix Dojo would never forget. Their training was a ritual, each strike a promise of justice. What none of the bullies could have imagined was that their next victims weren't just experienced fighters. They were experts at teaching bullies lessons that would mark their lives forever. The 3rd week at Silver Phoenix Dojo began with Caleb deciding to definitely escalate the violence. "Special demonstration today," he announced to the class, his eyes fixed on the twins with pure malice. His voice trembled, with barely concealed rage, fueled by weeks of the twins' unyielding composure. "We're going to teach these two about respect through pain," Logan smiled beside him, adjusting his black belt as if it were a weapon. "Free combat, no beginner protection rules. Time to separate the girls from the real fighters." Sensei Carter watched from the sidelines, clearly aware of what was about to happen, but choosing to pretend he was supervising warm-ups in another area. His inaction was a final nail in the coffin of his credibility. 30 students formed a circle, some visibly uncomfortable, others eager for the spectacle of humiliation that had become routine at the dojo. "My first," Caleb growled, assuming a combat stance with exaggerated arrogance. "I'm going to break that arrogance piece by piece. Maybe after that you'll learn where you belong." That's when Ava did something that silenced the entire dojo. Instead of assuming the awkward basic stance she had been faking for weeks, she slid into a fighting stance that any experienced fighter would recognize immediately. Low, fluid, lethal. His muscles tensed with military precision, his weight distributed with technical perfection. "Caleb," she said calmly, her voice carrying an authority that made the air in the dojo grow heavy. Her words were a gauntlet thrown, a challenge that shifted the balance of power. "Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" The question caught him completely off guard. There was something in her voice, in the way she moved, that was completely different from the scared beginner he had been torturing for weeks. It was as if a mask had fallen away, revealing something far more dangerous beneath. "What do you think you're doing?" he hissed. His bravado cracked, exposing a flicker of fear he couldn't suppress. But Ava had already transformed completely. It was like watching a predator shed its lamb's clothes. Caleb's first attack was a traditional high karate kick, technical, powerful, but completely predictable to someone trained in real combat. Ava not only dodged it with supernatural ease, she countered with a devastating Muay Thai combination that caught Caleb in the solar plexus with enough force to bend him completely in half. The strike was a thunderclap, shattering Caleb's illusion of invincibility. The dojo exploded in exclamations of absolute shock. Caleb staggered backward, his eyes wide with disbelief and growing pain, trying to process what had just happened. "That's impossible!" Logan shouted, rushing desperately to help his friend. "She's a white belt, this can't be happening!" "She was," Nora replied coldly, assuming her own fighting stance as Logan approached in a panic. Her icy calm was a mirror to Ava's ferocity, a dual threat that unnerved the bullies. "Now we are exactly what we have always been." Logan attempted a completely desperate lunge, but Nora intercepted him with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu technique executed with surgical precision that sent him flying across the mat. The sound of the impact echoed through the dojo like a gunshot, and Logan landed with a thud that caused several spectators to recoil. Caleb tried to recover, wiping blood from his mouth, but Ava had already positioned herself for the final blow. With precision that spoke of years of intensive training, she applied an arm lock that forced Caleb to his knees. His face pressed against the mat as his position of superiority turned into humiliating and total submission. "Please," Caleb gasped, tears of pain and pure humiliation streaming down his face. "I give up. I give up completely." "Interesting," Ava replied, maintaining the exact pressure needed to cause intense pain without causing permanent damage. Her control was a masterclass, a deliberate display of power that left no room for doubt. 3 weeks of talking about discipline, hierarchy, and respect, and now you give up the first time you face someone who can actually fight back? Sensei Carter finally rushed in to intervene, his face completely white with panic at seeing his star student being completely dominated. "Stop, immediately, this is against all the rules of the dojo." His voice was hollow, a desperate plea to salvage his crumbling authority. "What rules?" Nora asked calmly, holding Logan immobilized with professional ease as he whimpered against the mat. "The same rules you ignored during 3 weeks of systematic abuse." It was then that Ava took her smartphone out of her pocket, still holding Caleb down with just one hand. "Sensei Carter, would you like to explain to this live camera why you allowed your students to make comments about monkeys learning human movements and street fighting traditions?" The camera was a spotlight, exposing Carter's complicity to the world. Carter's face turned completely pale. You were recording everything." 3 full weeks of evidence, Nora confirmed, also revealing her own device. Her revelation was a death knell, sealing the fate of the dojo's corrupt hierarchy. Every assault, every racist comment, every moment you consciously pretended not to see what was happening right in front of you. Caleb began to sob uncontrollably against the mat, the reality of his situation finally crystallizing. Please delete this. My parents, the university, my full $50,000 0-cent scholarship." His pleas were a pathetic echo of the arrogance he'd wielded for weeks. "Now you care about consequences," Ava hissed, her voice heavy with contempt. "Funny how that works, isn't it? 3 weeks of humiliation and now you want mercy." Logan was hyperventilating under Nora's control, clearly panicking. "We didn't know. You seemed normal, like real beginners." "What exactly did we seem like?" Nora asked, her voice dripping with deadly contempt. Her question was a scalpel, slicing through Logan's excuses. Easy victims, defenseless girls who wouldn't fight back. People who would accept being treated like trash. The circle of students was in absolute shock. Some frantically recorded with cell phones, others whispered among themselves, all processing the complete reversal of power they had just witnessed. "Release my students immediately," Carter ordered, trying to regain any semblance of authority, "or I'll be forced to call the police." Ava smiled coldly, sending a chill through the dojo. Her smile was a final verdict, a promise that justice was inevitable. "Please do. I'd love to explain to the officers why 2 minors had to document systematic discrimination because the authorities at this establishment completely failed to protect them. You tricked everyone, Caleb weighed, still immobilized. You pretended to be weak beginners. We are legitimately white belts at this dojo, Ava replied. We never lied about that. You assumed that white belts meant weak and defenseless. That's your problem. Nora finally released Logan, who crawled away, clearly terrified. By the way, Caleb, Logan, Sensei Carter, you should know that our father is Colonel Samuel Davis, military expert in institutional discrimination investigation. The mention of their father's name was a bombshell, a signal that the twins' reach extended far beyond the dojo. The name hit Carter like a punch in the stomach. Samuel Davis had a legendary reputation for dismantling systems of abuse in military and civilian organizations. He's expecting our final report tonight, Ava added, finally releasing Caleb, who collapsed on the floor in a fetal position, along with all the digital evidence we collected and already sent to the external servers. As the twins calmly walked away, leaving behind 2 completely shattered bullies and an instructor in absolute panic, the silence in the dojo was deafening. Caleb and Logan, who had spent weeks feeling superior and powerful, now faced the devastating reality that their lives, their reputations, their futures, their dreams were completely in the hands of the 2 girls they had catastrophically underestimated. Their defeat was a public execution, their arrogance reduced to ashes in moments. But if you think that public humiliation was the end of the story, get ready to find out how true justice was just getting started. 6 months later, the Davis sisters walked through the halls of State University as guest instructors for the martial arts anti-bullying program. Their lectures on discrimination disguised as tradition-filled auditoriums and schools across the state requested their workshops on how to identify and combat systematic abuse. Their presence was a revolution, a living testament to the power of resilience and strategy. Do you remember Silver Phoenix Dojo? Ava asked an audience of 300 physical education students. It closed for good in January 2025. The investigation led by Colonel Samuel Davis had been devastating and thorough. The twins' recording served as central evidence in a lawsuit that exposed years of systematic discrimination not only against Black students, but against any student whose families were not part of the white social circle. Sensei Carter lost his instructor's license permanently and faced charges of institutional negligence. His downfall was a cautionary tale, a warning to those who enable abuse. Silver Phoenix Dojo was forced to pay $2 million, 0 cents, in damages to 17 families who had withdrawn their children after similar incidents. Caleb Walsh never got another chance at competitive martial arts. His full $50,000, 0 cents scholarship to Duke University was revoked when the video of his humiliation at the dojo went viral, racking up over 8 million views. The video was a scarlet letter, branding Caleb with his own cruelty. Today he works in his father's sporting goods store warehouse. Far from the mats, where he once considered himself superior, Logan Brooks gave up martial arts entirely after developing severe combat-related anxiety. He moved to another state with his family, who lost several business contracts when the local community systematically boycotted their businesses. The irony, Nora explained to the students, is that they spent months trying to teach us about place and hierarchy, but they never understood that true strength doesn't come from colored belts or financial privilege. The twins had founded their own gym, Dignity Combat Arts, specializing in training young people who face discrimination. Their methods combine traditional martial arts techniques with civil rights education and evidence documentation. We don't teach our students to pick fights, Ava continued. We teach them to recognize when a fight has already started, even if it's disguised as tradition or discipline. Their mission was a legacy, empowering others to dismantle oppressive systems. The audience applauded, but the real validation came from the results. Dozens of cases of discrimination in schools and gyms were exposed by students trained by the Davis sisters. The systematic documentation model they developed became the national standard for institutional bullying investigations. Samuel Davis watched proudly from the back row of the auditorium. His daughters had turned a traumatic experience into a tool for social change, proving that the best revenge really was success that benefited others besides themselves. "Do you want to know the secret?" Nora asked as she neared the end of the presentation. "Caleb and Logan were never our real enemies. They were just symptoms of a sick system." Her words were a rallying cry, inspiring the audience to challenge injustice. The real enemy was the culture that allowed people like them to thrive through the systematic humiliation of others, Ava added. And systems only change when they are confronted in an intelligent and documented way. A student raised her hand. "How did you stay calm during 3 weeks of abuse?" "Because we knew that every insult, every assault, every moment of humiliation was being recorded," Nora replied. "They thought they were breaking us, but they were actually building the file that would destroy them." "Revenge wasn't defeating 2 bullies in combat," Ava explained. "It was turning our pain into enough power to protect hundreds of other kids who would have gone through the same abuse if we hadn't acted." Their strategy was a blueprint, a guide for others to follow in the fight for justice. Today, former students of Silver Phoenix Dojo seek out the Davis sisters to apologize for not intervening when they witnessed the abuse. Many have become active advocates against discrimination in their own communities. Caleb and Logan, on the other hand, live in social isolation. Their reputations permanently tarnished by the video showing 2 senior black belts being thoroughly humiliated by 2 girls they considered inferior. The most important lesson, Ava concluded, is that true strength isn't about who can hit the hardest. It's about who can turn injustice into justice, pain into purpose, and humiliation into education for future generations. The Davis twins prove that the best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so powerful and positive that it renders everything they stood for irrelevant. They turned 3 weeks of hell into decades of social change. Their triumph was a beacon, illuminating a path for others to rise above adversity, showing that sometimes justice comes not through force, but through intelligence, patience, and an unwavering determination to create a better world. If this story of intelligent overcoming touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to discover more stories that prove that true strength lies in turning adversity into an opportunity for positive change.